It's 11 o'clock in Pasadena and 2 o'clock in Paramus, New Jersey. This is Joe Abadi and you're listening to Vintage Motocross Radio. Today's show is brought to you by Vintco, keep the ride going. Motion Pro for all your specialized tools, cables, and controls. Full Circle Racing Limited, Racer X Magazine, Northwest Mako CZ, Golan Industries, and Preston Petty Products. The legend continues. A special thanks to Paul Stainard of Preston Petty Products. On Saturday, before the Trailblazers reunion began in Anaheim, California, I was able to sit down for a few minutes with Preston Petty. We all know Preston as the inventor of the plastic fender and other aftermarket parts we've all enjoyed for decades and used on our off-road bikes. However, I talked about some other facets of Preston's life with him, and I wanted to share them with you today. Before I begin running the interview, a little brief background on who Preston actually is. He was born February 19th, 1941. He began riding at 11 years old. By the age of 13, he was competing in TT races, and by 16, he was rated as one of the top off-road riders in Southern California. Preston was one of the first racers to ride a Honda in America. This was before Honda even had a distributorship here. He was also part of the international six-day trials teams, and as an early pioneer of American motocross, he helped Edison Dye start the motocross movement in America. Of course, Preston was most known for his plastic fenders, and he took the market by storm and at one point was selling over 2,000 fenders a day. I recall reading an article in a short-lived magazine named Motocross Journal where they interviewed Preston and mentioned that he was a pilot who owned his own plane. Not much was discussed during the interview about him owning the plane, and I asked Preston more about that. So let's hear what he had to say. We are at the Trailblazers reunion in Anaheim, California, and I'm with probably the toughest guy to catch up with here. It's Preston Petty. In 1969, he was in a competitive race and bent a fender on an aluminum bike and said, "There's got to be a better way." And of course, he came up with the legendary Preston Petty fender. Preston, thank you for taking some time to speak to me today.
Thank you for the opportunity to do it.
You're very welcome. You know, Preston, we could spend so much time here speaking today, but we only have so much time.
Oh, sure.
So one of the first things I want to ask you about is, that always fascinated me, was your love for flying. You're a pilot, you had a jet. Tell me about those days when you first got into flying.
Well, when I first got, I always loved flying, airplanes and model airplanes and that, but the only time I could really afford flying was when I had enough money off of my computer programming income to afford the hourly payments to a Cessna 172 to learn how to fly it. And then that occurred about the time I got the fender thing going, and our well-accepted fender sales gave me the mechanism to be able to buy bigger and better airplanes. And I mean, it's topped out with $1 million prop jet airplane. And I could go see a race on the West Coast and the East Coast the next weekend and be back to work. So that's having that.
So it was really the fender business that really gave you the financial freedom to go out and live your dream as far as being a pilot.
That is correct. You bet.
Where are some places that you flew to other than America? Did you ever fly abroad or go out to Hawaii?
I flew around the world solo myself. I flew, put a bunch of gas tanks in that thing and took off from Newburgh, Oregon, and flew to Gander, Newfoundland, Shannon, Ireland, London and Paris, and saw Franco Cherbis in Bergamo, Italy, and then flew down to the Middle Eastern thing.
Preston explained that he had flown all over the world many times solo, which got me to thinking about asking him about some of the passengers on some of his flights. Who were some of the other interesting people that maybe you've had on your plane with you that maybe some of our viewers might know? Any racers? Did you fly any racers anywhere?
Yeah, Franco.
Franco was service?
Sure.
Okay.
And a guy named Brad Lackey.
Mm-hmm.
And with him quite a bit. Roger DeCoster, he helped me hold the radio while I was working on it while we were flying along.
Is that right?
It was very helpful. All the racers were very helpful and appreciative.
For anyone that was born after 1985, a personal computer is something that seems to have always been in your life. Preston began programming computers in the late 1950s, and I asked him about that. Now, Preston, you also mentioned that not only the Fender business, but you did a lot with computer programming too.
Yes.
What are some of the computer things that you did? And you probably got started on that way before we had personal computers at home. So how long ago did you get involved with computers, and what did you do then?
Well, 1959 and 60, I got involved with a company called Rocketdyne, which made the jet engines for the Saturn missiles.
Okay.
And that's how I learned computer-controlled machining. We had a machine. I had to develop a program that would machine these impeller blades out of a solid billet of material.
So your computer programming had to do with machining too?
Yes.
I see.
Number one, it was focused on machining. Payroll and that stuff, I did have to do those things, but not because I wanted to.
Okay. How long did you stay with the computers and programming machines?
For about the first 30 years.
30 years.
Yeah.
So that was happening the same time as the Fender business was going
on
as well?
I used the computer programming to make the Fender mold. And we were kind of leading edge technology back then.
With Preston being involved in motorcycle riding since he was 11 years old and being a part of the off-road and motocross culture, I was curious to know what a few of his favorite bikes were. Here's what he had to say. So did you also have some patents on some products?
Oh yeah, we had about half a dozen patents on different design, utility, and design patents.
Okay. Now tell me this, you've been around for 8 decades, Preston, and we all know you from the Fenders and so much of being involved in the motocross world. Your first bike, I think, was a Colt in 1954 or something, I read.
You got a good memory.
Yeah, well, I did a little research before speaking to you, but what I was wondering was, what's the one bike that really left a long impression on you throughout all your years in motorcycling? What was the one bike you rode that really you never forgot?
Well, I think the most fun I had on, when you forget, are you talking about joy or are you talking about performance? That kind of thing.
Well, let's talk about both. Which one gave you joy? Which one performed the most? Or the best for you?
Yeah. A DKW.
Okay.
125cc. In 1969, I got to ride the 6 days in Garmisch-Partenkirchen, which is down in the Bavarian Alps area, and spectacular terrain, and we got to ride that for 6 days. And it's like the sound of music, riding, Anyhow, that was the most fun.
While many people may have not known about Preston's love for flying or computers, he was well known for his involvement in motorcycle magazines like Dirt Bike, where he had his own column entitled Ask the Expert. In this next segment, Preston talks about how he got involved with becoming a writer. How did you get involved with Dirt Bike magazine? I always enjoyed your column. In fact, it was very, very inspirational to me as a young man. We all remember you from the Dirt Bike magazine days. So tell us a little bit about how you got started with Dirt Bike.
Well, there was a magazine called Cycle Guide, and I went out to help one of the riders that was learning, one of the editors, and he was a very poor rider. He used to have trouble when it came to stream crossing or something. So I'd give him tips. You might try this or that to make it better. We were up there for a few days. And then he said, well, once you write down, that's good information. Other people would use that, write that down and make it available. We'll put it in the magazine, and so other people are going to read it. And then that got me started. Then there was another magazine right after that, Popular Cycling, that was. And then right after that, they started Dirt Bike Magazine. And then Motocross Action started about 6 months after that. And,
So who hired you there at Dirt Bike? Was that Dick Miller?
No, actually, it was a guy by the name of, I'm trying to think of
Okay.
it right now. Anyhow, he's the one that hired Dick Miller.
I see.
And he took over, and then Dick Miller was running it for a while, and he started Motocross Action magazine. So Dick Miller retired being the editor of Motocross Action magazine. And Dick and I rode the Baja together in a 125cc class, and then won our class in 1973, I think it was, when I first came out. So we had a good time together.
Preston was not only an accomplished desert and motocross racer, he also represented the United States abroad at some international events. Here are a few that he had a few minutes to talk about. And you also raced some other international six-day trials events.
Yeah.
What were the other? I think you were on 3 teams. What were the other ones?
Well, we were on a club team and a boss team and a silver team, they called it, I think it was. And the first one was 1969 in Garmisch, Germany, and then the second was in El Escorial, Spain, down by Madrid, and then the third time was the Isle of Man. Unfortunately, the second 2 years that I rode the 6 days, I rode a Puch, P-U-C-H, motorbike, and both occasions, on the first day the gearbox broke, and it did for just about everybody on our team. I really only finished one 6 days, which was the Garmisch, the German thing.
With Preston being involved in off-road racing from its inception in America, I asked him about some of the riders that he remembered most. Tell me about some of the riders that you remember and chains of events that took place throughout all the years. As far as Europeans or American riders, who were some people that you saw early on that maybe you said, this kid's really got something, there's a different way he rides? Who are some people that you saw? Because I know you saw them all early on.
A lot of
but
them.
who was one that jumped out? You mentioned Adolfville a little while ago, but maybe there are some others.
Well, Adolf was a German, very strong German. But Brad Lackley would be my favorite, I think.
Sure.
He's been doing it longer than anybody, and he stuck with it for a decade.
Yeah.
Took him to finally become the world champion.
Yeah. And it's great, in fact, that he's being inducted into the Trailblazers Hall of Fame tonight.
Yeah.
When were you inducted into the Trailblazers? Do you remember?
1999.
99. And what about the AMA Hall of Fame?
The year after that.
Oh, okay. So 99 and 2000.
Yeah.
At this point of the conversation, I could see Preston was becoming a little tired, and he also had to get ready for the event coming up, the Trailblazers Party. So I asked him about a new chapter coming up in his life and had to bring the interview to a close. Now, Preston, you've been in Los Angeles most of your life, probably all of it, but I understand you'll be moving to Texas in a very, well, I think tomorrow.
That's right. You got it, man.
Where in Texas are you going?
Right near Dallas.
Okay. Who will you be staying with there?
My wife, ex-wife.
Okay.
And she's been there for 25 years. She's here in the hotel right now. We're getting a place to do it, and then we go to the event tomorrow, and then the next morning we take off and fly to Dallas.
So you'll be a Cowboys fan starting Monday?
Yeah, that's right. I hope I make it.
Oh, you'll make it, Preston.
I hope.
I want to thank you for taking the time to speak to me, Preston.
You do
the
a good
legendary
job.
Preston Petty, and the legend continues.
Thank you.
I love you, Preston.
Love you.
We'll see you next time.
You're sweet. Thanks for all your help.
You're
and
welcome.
tips. People really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Well, that concludes my time with legendary Preston Petty. I'd like to thank Preston, Mary Petty, and Paul Stainard for helping me make this time possible with Preston. In closing, I'd like to once again thank our sponsors, Vintco, Full Circle Racing, Motion Pro, Northwest Mako CZ, Golan Industries, Racer X, and of course, Preston Petty Products. This is Joe Abadi. Thank you for joining me today at Vintage Motocross Radio.
My name is Preston Petty.